Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Master Your Mental podcast. I cannot wait to get in today's topic with my beautiful guest today. As you guys can see, we're going to be talking all about overcoming abuse to reach joy. I'm bringing on Gina Rolkowski today, who is a coach specializing in helping women overcome abuse and discover joy. Gina is a former primary school teacher with experience in the nonprofit sector, where she offered full-time free childcare for single mothers. I am so excited to have Gina with us today to chat about this topic, the work she has done, and all the lessons she has learned so far from this work. So, without further ado, welcome Gina to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Paris. I'm so happy to be here.
Of course. I'm so happy to have you here because, as we were talking about before recording, we got introduced to each other from a mutual friend who's amazing, Robin Graham, who I also had on the podcast. But she connected us, and instantly I was like, yes. I was like, I would love to talk with Gina. I would love to have her come on here because you guys are going to hear about this right now because I'm going to ask her. So I'm going to ask her the first question and we're going to get into this. So tell us, what inspired or interested you in becoming a coach?
I have to tell you honestly, Paris, I really struggled with becoming a coach for a long time because I just felt like it was such a cliche of like, oh, I really want to help people because I've been through so much myself, and I just thought, oh, that's just like, I wanted to be sure I wasn't doing it, like going from like one means of trying to fulfill myself and get attention to like another, but the more I realized, the more I kind of worked through my own stuff, the more I realized that I have a gift to share with people, and I'm not afraid to share things that other people are afraid to talk about, and it's really important to normalize this situation of, overcoming abuse, of like what the journey is like, how you feel. And, and I was so encouraged by family and friends, and, I really prayed a lot about this, and I really felt like God was like, I want you to share your story. And I was like, oh man, all right. So like, here I am. And now I'm actually, enjoying it way more than I thought I would. It's really fun to actually take some of the creativity I've had over time, even as a teacher, and put it into my coaching. So it's not such a heavy thing. So it really did come from a lot of prayer and my own experience of realizing that the one piece that I missed in my own journey of, therapists, and this is that there's very few really trauma-informed people out there. And number two, there wasn't much in there that included like, how do I include God? And I had a strong faith. So I was like, okay. And so next thing I know, I put this thing together, prayed about it, and here we are. So
wow, I love that. And I really love how you talk about how it's come from the fact that you've experienced so much yourself and you're wanting to use that and take those experiences and pull those lessons from that to really help guide others through this. And I also think it's so interesting that you talk about, in the beginning when you were like, oh, I really want to do this, I really want to become a coach and help people. But at the same time, like struggling with that, like struggling like, should I do this? Like,
I still have imposter syndrome. Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's just like, and I just really didn't want to be, it had to be something that I genuinely wanted to do, because you can tell when people are not being genuine or authentic. Mm-hmm. And the last thing I wanted was, you can, I don't know, people are doing the best they can, but when you could tell there are people out there who are like, I want to help you because,
yeah.
It's just like, I don't know about that, so I really wanted to be sure, and I took a little while to trust myself, really trust that that this was something I could do. And, you do it afraid is pretty much what I've learned. And then all of a sudden you're not afraid anymore. You know what I mean? Like everybody's like, oh, yes. And it's like, no, do it afraid. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, look what I did. I sometimes, I'll tell you honestly, a little secret, like there are times when I look at some of the work I've done and some of the people I've helped, and I like to just look at it because I'm really just like amazed at what I have been able to do. When there were times when I thought, for years, I couldn't get out of bed, you know what I mean? So I'm like, wow. Like, and I think that's what part of the joy comes in, is like, look what I did. Like, look what I can do. Look how I can help people. and really being proud of yourself for when there's so many years and you just want to hide under the covers.
Yeah, no, it's so real because, I've experienced that, and I feel like once you have that where you're able to overcome these traumas, these abuses, all these things that have happened that are so painful, so ugly, and so harmful to you and other people, but then you can move past that and move through that to really show others that you can do that too. And I think it's
Yeah.
so amazing, like you're saying, in the work you've been doing with people where you're watching someone, I would love to ask you, like what has that been like for you? Because I know when you're coaching people, like obviously like as in the process of coaching someone else, you get to watch them blossom and like watch them grow in their journey of coming to you like,
Right.
hey, I'm struggling with this. I really want to work on this. And then also kind of feeling like they might not ever be able to overcome that. And then watching them
Right.
actually do that. So I'd love to
Right.
ask you, like for you in your journey, like have you had a moment like that where you thought, I'm not going to be able to make it through this or over this obstacle, and then you did? Like,
Oh my
what was that
God.
like?
I would probably have to pick out of a hat. There's so many
Yeah.
inside that hat. You know what I mean? It's like, which one? So
Yeah.
I think, oh God, I think probably one of the biggest issues I had really was um, thinking that I was capable of anything. Like this was probably like this will be 18 years ago this month, but I had gone from like being addicted to drugs, not realizing that I had been sexually abused. I mean, I didn't even remember that for until like 2010 or something, but I was living the trauma of it over and over. And so I had gone inpatient to Women's Institute for Corporation Therapy, and I really thought, oh, in 2 weeks I'm going to go to this place and I'm going to come out and I'm going to be all better. And I mean, I can't even tell you the shape. Like my body shook probably for a good year in withdrawal. I was in withdrawal for so long. I mean, it was horrible. I couldn't even, when I finally got out, I thought, how am I ever, how am I going to function without these drugs? What am I going to do? And I dumped them down the toilet, and I ended up actually getting accepted to graduate school like 4 months later. And about 3 months prior to that, I had to force myself to get into my car and drive myself a half a mile up the road to the store because I didn't have the drugs anymore. I still thought I was crazy. I was just like, but I knew if I didn't get in that car and make myself do something that I was going to, everything was going to get scarier and scarier. And so, I mean, long story short, I got in my car, I went to the store. I didn't even go in the first time, walked around, just drove around the parking lot, drove right home, and, one thing really led to another. It was like, oh, okay, I can do that. I can do this. And, the next thing I know, that January, I was in graduate school. And I guess a couple months after that, I was a graduate research assistant. I ended up, teaching. I mean, it really was just like, it's hard to believe that there were times when that I just literally couldn't get out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or that all I did was, take drugs or whatever, I did. But I remember really thinking to myself, how is this ever going to get better? Like how is this, and I remember at the time I would take all I would do was take like baths all day long because I wasn't working. I had just gotten out of this, I was still working with my therapist. And I called my therapist one day and I said, I don't know what to do. All I'm doing is like taking bubble baths and like reading books and going for walks. And I said, I'm so bored. And she said, your job right now is to stay off drugs. And I was like, oh, okay. And so it put a new spin on it. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just a nobody. I was like really working hard. I was going to my AA meetings. I was doing all my, so my job at the time, as awful as it seemed, really was just staying off the drugs. And I can't believe when I look back, this will be 18 years, August 31st.
That's
Like I didn't think I could do
amazing.
18 minutes of it, you know what I mean, or seconds. But yeah, I mean, that was probably I just remember shaking in my car, like, oh my God, and I really just did my best to, go to my meetings, take my bubble baths and really connect with God.
And you did it. You did it. And that's incredible because that just what you said right there, where you said you didn't even think you could do it for 18 minutes and it's been 18 years. That is amazing because, and I relate so much to what you're saying. And I'm sure a lot of people as well can relate to, especially thinking back to a time when you were at your lowest, when you were struggling, like and when you look back on that, it is kind of hard to think back to like how was I like that, for so
I know,
long?
that's such a good
Yeah.
point, because
And it is.
yeah, it's like, I always knew that this person was in there, like who I really am and who I am today. But every time I opened my mouth or I interacted with anyone for years and years, like somebody else kind of came out. And I
Mhm.
realize now, it took me years and years. I was so ashamed of that. I was so embarrassed about my behavior. And and it's actually why I have that little picture behind me, but it's, when I really looked at all those things that I was ashamed of or embarrassed of, and I realized I changed my perspective of them, seeing, oh my gosh, they were trauma responses. I didn't know any better. I was trying to survive. I was trying to get my needs met. I have nothing to be ashamed of. If anything, I have compassion for myself.
Mhm.
I was trying to feel loved. I was trying to feel
Yes.
empowered. I was trying to feel safe. I say all the time to, to people I work with, if you're stuck on a desert island and all you have is like gross crickets to eat, are you going to go, ew, why would you eat that? Or are you going to go, I'll take you know what I mean? And so that's kind of what I think of when I changed my perspective of what I did. It made it much more easy to approach, changing it. You know what I mean? I love the little
I
picture I did
love
back
that.
there, because it feels like that's all the things I was embarrassed about. When you put them together, they make up who I am,
Yeah.
and I really think when you can really recognize them, that's like the first key in my program, is recognizing them and seeing them with compassion. You have nothing to be ashamed of. You are
Mhm.
a freaking survivor. Like
Yes.
pat yourself on the back and go, okay, so I slept around. You know what I
I
mean?
love that.
It's all I knew at the time, right? I can change that, right?
Yes. And I love how you also bring up like that transition in mindset, because I would love to touch on that too. Cause I know like in trying to bridge that gap, right, from overcoming abuse. And then first of all, just like having awareness of that,
Yeah,
because a lot of people, like you mentioned, when you're younger and you go through something or not even knowing that you
right.
went through sexual abuse, or like you experienced that, and then realizing that later, and then having that awareness and then saying, okay, what do I do now that I
Right.
know this? Like, how do I deal with this? How do I process this? And sometimes that can stop people because it gets so overwhelming that
Yeah, it
I feel like
does.
it can consume you. And it really does, like you said, change who you are. Cause you said deep inside you, you knew that how you are now was there, but she couldn't
Right.
come out because
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes we, do these things and, behave in certain ways because we don't know how to get past it. We don't think we can.
Don't know.
It's
Well, we don't
impossible.
know. Yeah, like
Yeah.
we don't
So
know.
I love
And
to
that's the
ask
thing that
you,
I
like,
think is
it's
so
so
like
true.
comforting. Like, it's okay. You didn't know. I didn't
Yeah,
know. Like, you don't know.
of
That's okay.
course. Yeah. And
Are you
how
going
did
to
you
yell at somebody?
transition? How
I'm
did you,
sorry.
yeah,
How did I
no.
transition?
So how did you transition like so the mindset you used to have when
Mm-hmm.
you were struggling at your most? How did you transition that mindset into the one that you have now? What was the most helpful steps for you in doing that?
I would have to say, honestly, perspective,
Mhm.
really recognizing, learning to recognize, okay, I can, in fact, I just wrote a blog about this, about making friends with your defenses. And there's a great book by Sue Monk Kidd, and she talks about this. But um, when I realized, when my perspective of my journey, like all of it, but basically who I, the shame. Okay, when I really was able to shift my perspective from shame to like compassion, I can't even tell you the shift that I felt in my body. And I think the other thing too is when I realized, I can tell you, there was one time, this was way back 18 years ago too, and it was a little glimmer of hope that I had that I really dismissed at the time. But I had to do 50 positive affirmations, eyeball to eyeball, for 6 months when I came out of this thing. And they were like, you have to do this or you're going to die. So I was like, okay, I hated doing it. But one of them was that I came up with was, I'm a valuable child of God. And I remember at the time thinking, oh, wait a minute, then I'm not really like a piece of crap. Like, I'm not if that's who I am, then I'm really not a loser,
You're changing your thought process.
Yeah, and
I
it
love it.
literally like clicked. I was like, well, wait a minute. So now, mind you, I chased for like 15 years after that. I chased after, or 10 years, I chased after other things to make me feel valuable until I finally had to come back to that. But it really was a change in perspective of like, who am I really? and looking at my experience, my behaviors, what I've done, how I felt, what I thought about myself with compassion. It was such a shift in perspective for me to go, I'm not a loser. I'm highly wounded. I was wounded by people who were supposed to trust me.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody taught me how to feel safe. Nobody taught me how to feel loved. So I had to do what I had to do, and it's like the healing, the abuse was not my fault, but the healing is my responsibility. And there are times when I would fight against that and be really mad, want to throw things, and it's not fair. But the point is, if I wanted the joy that I really believed God has for me, then I had to go on the journey.
Yeah, no, I love that line. You just said, you guys, I feel like I just started doing this in recent episodes, but I literally have a notepad and I'm writing down things that you are saying, because these are such powerful tips right now. And just what she said right there with, of course, like the abuse is not your fault, but healing is your responsibility. And I feel like sometimes it could take so long to get there, because sometimes we, when you're caught in that struggle, when you're dealing with this and you're faced with these things, we start to feel like, that you've been hurt for so long that you want someone else, to do that, to like help, to guide you to do it. But then when you really start to have that realization, like, no, I can change, like to look at the things in your life that you can control. Right. So like, instead of, because I feel like when you focus so much on, like the past and, things that you've gone through that were really traumatizing and hurtful, we put all our attention there, that we can't see that we can start to do things to shift, like you said, shift that perspective and start to take those steps to changing our mindset and changing, most importantly, how we speak to ourselves. Because if we continuously tell ourselves, well, this was your fault and this happened and it's all on you, and, just, you're pathetic, you're not a good person, like all of these things that we tell ourselves all the time keep us stuck, and it keeps us from being able to move forward, because we already told ourselves there's no way you're going to make it out of this. There is no way, you are stuck here. But then when you start to do that work, like you said, those 50 affirmations, because I can tell you guys that when I started doing affirmations, I was like, in gratitude, I was like, what is this?
Oh my God.
What is
like,
this?
And no, thank you. I was like, gag me, ew, like, just, and I mean, and it felt so like, oh my God, it was like eye roll after eye roll, and when when somebody actually said to me, you don't have to believe it for it to be true. And I was like, I mean, I guess the question comes down to sometimes like, how bad do you want it? You know what I mean? And I really mean, like, and I do have to say, like, one thing that is a little bit of a pet peeve for me when it comes to healing from abuse is that a lot of abuse really does get stuck in our bodies, and it is a somatic experience that has to be addressed physically. Like, there's the book, the Bible, that I call the abuse, healing from abuse. The body keeps the score.
Yes.
And there's, and so it's really, really, one of the things that really did help me too was really learning to get present in my body.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard because A, I hated my body. B, I didn't want to be a self, so it's like, be present in my body. Like, ew. But to really, when I started doing little things, like, okay, you know what? I can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to just wiggle my toes because I can't stand. Don't tell me to breathe. I'll tell you that right now. Don't tell me to breathe. I couldn't stand that. So that's one thing that used to drive me nuts. Okay. But there are, like, roll your shoulders, wiggling your feet, but to really start to be present in my body and then be able to, like, learn to talk to myself, and talk to myself like the wounded child that I was, really, like, closing my eyes, picturing getting down on her eye level and just holding her and going, I see you're scared. Like, you come here. I'm going to keep you safe. It's okay. I mean, really being present with her, and sometimes even as an adult, thinking of myself as an adult and a child, I'll even imagine, like, God holding me holding my little girl, and him just holding us together, and being like, I got you. Because sometimes, no matter what I say in my mind, I need to feel the peace of God in my spirit and my body. And I think sometimes that piece gets missed a lot because of all this mindset stuff. So just something to throw out there is that we are body, mind, and spirit. Mm-hmm. And we're not going to cure, because our body does keep a score. Like, our limbic system records all of the stuff that happened when we were abused. So in our body and our brains are going, you are never safe. You are never safe. So you really have to train your body to feel safe, because just doing it mindset it will not work for trauma survivors. It just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. No, I love
And
that
then
you
if we
said
try
that.
it, we feel like, because I did a lot of mindset stuff for a long time, and then I still felt bad. And then I thought it was my fault that I felt bad because I wasn't feeling better, because I was trying to tell myself to feel better.
Yeah, no,
You know
I
what I
love
mean?
that you bring that up because that's so true. Because I can tell you, just for, my own experience, but before, and just for you too, you can probably 100% relate to this before you deal with, addressing that trauma and like having the awareness of it and like taking the steps to recover. You could do so much stuff for mindset, but then you're still going to have, it's still going to be inside of you that you didn't yet address that. And I feel like it's so wild to me sometimes how things can come up from years ago, right? Like 10, 20 years ago. And you're like, and you sit there and you're like, oh my gosh, I've already dealt with this, I've already healed from this, but then it's like, it comes out of nowhere. And then you're sitting there and you're like, I should be doing my gratitude journal. I should be doing my affirmations, but then you're like, you can't stop thinking about it. So I think that's such a true point that you say, because, you could do all of this work, but then unless you first address the biggest piece of all of the stuff that is keeping you feeling this way and holding you back and making you feel like you can't do this, once you finally start to like address that and work on that and do the work on that, then it starts to become easier to open up these doors. Okay, now I can work on my mindset. Now I can work on my habits.
It's like I think of it as in like steps, keys to this breakthrough, and how, there's little breakthroughs in each key. We have this tendency to think, oh, I have this big breakthrough. But, that's why I called my program the Bridge to Breakthroughs, because we have to celebrate the little breakthroughs. And it's a really big deal to be able to go, okay, yeah, I did this, or I said that, or I do this, whatever it is, because we don't want to look at ourselves. Nobody wants to feel, because the whole thing goes back to feeling safe. If I'm not perfect, for lack of a better word, I'm not going to be safe. You know what I mean? And so when we can go, but no, I am safe. Like I am safe. Like really calm and go, okay, you know what? I mean, that's why there are times when I do my like meditate in the morning, or I have my quiet time. I really have learned to pay attention to doing what I need for me, not like, oh, I better like listen to this meditation, or I should read that journal, or I should read this in the Bible. I say, what do I need? And there are times when I will put on like my soft soaking music, and I'll be like, Lord, I got to just lay in your arms. That's all I got today. I need to feel your peace in my body, mind, and spirit. And I mean, I do imagine my head just laying on his lap and going, oh my God. And
I love the compassion and just the grace that you have, because I feel like that also can be hard to have for yourself, like to have that, because I feel like sometimes we get in this zone where we're like, I need to be doing this and this and this. But then if you miss like one or two, you're like, I'm a failure,
No,
you're not.
And I still struggle with that, because there are times when I think, I have this like, I like to tell my therapist all the time, I'm just like super recovered. So, I think I should, get up in the morning at, 5:30, do my like special prayer, sit on my like bamboo yoga mat, drink my like fair trade tea, go on my walk, in my bare feet and feel the earth, and it's like, for God's sake, I mean, when is enough enough? When is it okay to just be okay with whatever I can do? You know what I mean? And I really still have to tell myself, God still loves me. I'm still safe. It's okay.
I love that. Oh my gosh. And that brings me to, this is the question I always love to ask everybody. And I always save this for the end because the answers are so amazing. They're always so different. So I love to ask this to see what you're going to say to this. So what are you currently doing right now in this moment to master your mental?
Interesting question. What am I doing right now? Well, I'll tell you what I'm doing right now. And it reminds me of like this morning, and even just like before we spoke. I'm working on staying present with God in my body, because like I said, I woke up this morning and I just felt that, oh no, I have to do this and I have to do that, and I need to like have my little schedule. And I was like, no. I am going to really trust that I can figure out what I need. And I knew what I needed was nobody chirping in my ear about meditation, where I needed to just sit and be with God. And I knew the same thing even before I came on with you. And I just sat and I said, you know what? I'm going to wiggle my toes. I'm going to roll my shoulders back. I'm going to be present. I pictured God behind me, and I was like, I don't need to like tell myself, I'm going to say it's going to be okay. Blah, blah,
Yes.
blah. None of that. You know what I mean? I was like, sometimes I just have to stop. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. If you can hear my cat, I'm going to
Oh,
apologize.
can,
tried
I
so
actually
hard to get
couldn't
him
until you said
downstairs.
that's so funny.
I tried
But
so hard to get him downstairs, and I was like, this is so
oh
unprofessional.
no, it's totally fine. I kind of couldn't hear it until you brought it up, but I love what you just said. That's so beautiful because I feel like I haven't heard that one before, just being present. Really, that's what I hear from you is being present and understanding that, doing what your body is telling you that you need to do right now.
Yeah,
So
it's true.
I
It
love
really
it.
is
I
true.
love it so much. And you guys, I mean, she's just been so great this entire, I mean, I feel like I could talk to you all day long. I could
Oh,
spend
thank you,
hours
Paris.
on this with you and just go into so much more on this, but I love this conversation and you've given me like, and all of us, so many great tips. I literally
Oh,
sat
thank
here
you.
with this sticky note, taking notes, writing things down because it's been so good. So I honestly, I just want to thank you, for making the
Thank you,
time
Paris.
in your schedule to come on out here on Master Your Mental and share a little bit of your story, your work, your tips, your tricks with all of us, because it has been so amazing and just the best time. So Gina, thank you so much for coming out.
Thank
Love
you for
chatting with
having
you.
me, Paris. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. And you guys, whether you are listening during the daytime or the nighttime, I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day. And I'm going to end it on this note and say bye to you guys and bye to Gina. So bye, guys, and bye, Gina.
Bye bye, Paris.